The air in my tiny rented office always smells faintly of stale coffee and desperation. Today, that smell was choking me. I sat staring at the screen, which just 3 weeks ago had glowed with the promise of a future I'd worked my whole life for. Now it was just a blank grey rectangle, a mirror reflecting a broken man. It wasn't a small amount, it was everything. Every dime from the sale of my house, the seed money for the tech startup I'd planned since college, the whole inheritance from my grandmother. $480,000. Gone. Poof. Vanished into the convoluted digital ether managed by Dr. Alistair Finch and his impeccable, utterly fraudulent firm, Nexus Global Trust. I can still hear the voice, smooth as aged bourbon, confident and utterly charming. He didn't rush, he didn't pressure, he presented himself as a mentor, a man who saw potential where others saw risk. He convinced me that my money wasn't being invested, it was being stewarded in a proprietary high-frequency trading algorithm that guaranteed a 40% return in 6 months. The website was flawless, the documents were legally airtight, or so I thought, and the regular performance reports showed clockwork growth. I felt like a genius. The moment of realisation wasn't a sudden crash, it was a slow, agonising drop. The weekly reports stopped coming. Then the emails bounced. The website, that monument to digital artistry, returned a 404 error. Finally, I called the main number, the one he'd insisted was only for emergencies. It was disconnected. That's when the ice water hit my stomach. I was collateral damage in a professional's game. I was to the police, of course. They were sympathetic, professional, and utterly useless. Sir, these guys operate from international service. The money is routed through 3 different continents via crypto mixers. It's a ghost. We'll file a report, but the chances of recovery are... The detective trailed off, but the look in his eyes finished the sentence. 0. I walked out of the station feeling hollowed out, but the emptiness quickly curdled into something hard and sharp. Anger. Not just anger at being robbed, but at being played. I was a decent coder, a good analyst, and I'd fallen for a basic psychological trick dressed up in a financial suit. That realisation was the most painful theft of all. That night, I sat in the dark with a bottle of cheap whiskey in my laptop. I wasn't looking for a recovery strategy, I was looking for him. Not his digital ghost, but the man behind the mask. I started by tracing the small digital breadcrumbs the police had dismissed as noise. The registrar of his now defunct domain, a few linked IP addresses from the VPN he occasionally forgot to turn on, a single archive photo of his firm's headquarters, which turned out to be a stock image of a generic lobby in Frankfurt. But there was one tiny slip-up. In one of the early flawless PDFs he'd sent me, the metadata wasn't fully scrubbed. It showed the file had been created by a user named ASAdmin on a system named Arayon. And then a lucky break. An old obscure forum post from 5 years prior discussing a high-yield investment scheme that collapsed. The same exact structure, the same smooth sales pitch. The forum user who posted the warning back then mentioned the perpetrator's name, Alistair Sterling. Finch wasn't his name, it was Alistair Sterling. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. The city lights were blurry through the dust, but for the first time in weeks, my vision wasn't blurry. It was terrifyingly clear. I wasn't going to get the money back through the legal system. That system was too slow and too geographically bound to catch a shadow like Sterling. But I understood shadows. I understood code. And I understood how to build a world out of nothing but data. He'd built a fictional world to trap me. Now I would build a fictional world to trap him. The loss had stripped me of my future, but it had also freed me from my conscience. I was going hunting, and I was going to use his own tools against him. The revenge wouldn't be about recovery, it would be about echo. I wanted the sound of his own lies to be the last thing he ever heard before his whole world crumbled.
Alastair Sterling. The name was a key, and once I had it, the digital locks began to click open. The police were right, he was a ghost, but even ghosts leave faint traces of where they once lived. I abandoned the official channels completely. This was now a single-player game, and I was going to leverage the only asset I had left: my time, my coding skills, and a bottomless pit of cold fury. My apartment became a surveillance hub. I installed custom scripts on a cluster of cheap cloud servers, programming them to crawl the dark corners of the web, financial forums and public record databases using fuzzy logic matching on Alastair Sterling, AS-admin, and any permutation of his known fake companies. I learned to use open source intelligence tools, OSINT, not for ethical research, but for predatory tracking. What I found was terrifyingly impressive. Sterling wasn't just a scammer, he was a syndicate. He'd run variations of the Nexus Global Trust Con, the Phoenix Reserve, the Zenith Portfolio, the Orion Syndicate in at least 7 different countries over a decade. He specialised in mid-size investors, people like me, who had enough capital to be tempting, but not enough to trigger immediate, high-priority international investigations. He was careful, moving addresses every 6 months, refreshing his fake companies annually, and using layered shell corporations that made tracing the final destination of funds impossible. The physical tracking was a nightmare. He never used the same face for long. The only reliable lead I had was a single high-resolution photo from an old social media profile, since deleted, of a man who looked like Dr. Alastair Finch, but younger, leaning against a luxury yacht in Monte Carlo. A quick reverse image search revealed nothing, but a closer look at the yacht's name on the hull, the Siren, led me down another path. It took me 3 days to confirm that the Siren was chartered, not owned, and the charter payment had been made via a crypto wallet tied to a very specific, though heavily obfuscated, virtual private server in Eastern Europe. This VPS was the closest I had to a fixed address. I spent a week designing a passive reconnaissance tool, a silent, non-intrusive digital fingerprint sniffer, and deployed it near that VPS. I wasn't hacking the server, I was listening to the network traffic around it, looking for predictable human patterns. The patterns emerged slowly. An encrypted connection to a high-end coffee shop's public Wi-Fi in London, always on Tuesday mornings between 9 and 9:45 a.m. A regular non-VPN connection to a niche online chess club around midnight GMT. The man was brilliant, but he was also a creature of habit. He had his digital comfort zones. The chess club was the jackpot. I found his account, Sterling Knight. I created a new persona, the Rook. I played a few games, strategically losing to higher-ranked players to blend in. Then I challenged Sterling Knight. He accepted. He was an excellent player, aggressive and precise. We played 6 games over 2 weeks. He won 5. But during those games I did more than move pieces. I studied his clock times, his connection drops, and the subtle variations in his play that correlated with network latency. I confirmed his Tuesday morning coffee habit, his late night chess habit, and crucially, his current location, London. He was in my country. The ghost had materialised, briefly, in the city I'd sworn to leave. This elevated the game. Digital destruction was the goal, but to make it truly personal, I had to bring the hammer down while he was physically within reach of the consequences. The plan crystallised. I needed to build a trap so enticing, so perfectly mirrored to his own greed, that he would leave his protected digital fortress and step directly into my controlled environment. I wouldn't seek recovery of my funds, I would seek the complete, irreversible digital annihilation of Alastair Sterling, and I would watch it happen.
The game had shifted from defence to offence. Sterling wasn't a ghost in the machine anymore, he was a predictable pattern of movements and digital signatures. Now I had to construct a lure. It couldn't be a replica of his old scams, he'd spot that immediately. It had to be something new, something better than Nexus Global Trust, and critically, something only a high-level scammer would be prepared to risk his reputation to exploit. I called it the Janus Protocol. The premise was this:
a new revolutionary form of secure, untraceable capital movement based on quantum encrypted tokenized assets, the kind of thing that bypasses every known regulatory framework and promises absolute anonymity. It was catnip for career criminals. Over the next month, I worked almost non-stop crafting the digital infrastructure. It had to be impeccable. The website. I registered a domain through a heavily masked Russian registrar using a forged identity, making it look like an exclusive invite-only consortium. The site was minimalist, loaded with sophisticated-sounding but meaningless jargon about polymorphic ledger optimization and zero-knowledge proof transfers. It was designed to look too secure for the common public, only accessible to the financially elite, i.e., those who understood high-level fraud. The whistleblower. I created a secondary persona, Dr. Elias Thorne, a supposedly disillusioned ex-developer of the Janus protocol. Thorne's goal was to leak the information to specific curated forums and dark web channels known to be frequented by people like Sterling, hinting that the system was being misused by bad actors and needed testing to expose its flaws. This provided the perfect cover story. Sterling wouldn't think he was being scammed, he would think he was exploiting a security vulnerability in a nascent, powerful financial tool. The proof of concept. This was the most crucial part. I coded a miniature working demo of the protocol's login area. It used actual elliptic curve cryptography for a few seconds before generating perfectly realistic but totally fake balances and transaction histories. When Sterling got in, he wouldn't see simple promises. He'd see a functional, tempting artifact. I timed the rollout meticulously. I waited until I knew Sterling was fully engaged in winding down one of his smaller schemes. He'd be flush with cash, arrogant, and looking for his next big mark. I used my Sterling Knight intelligence to plant the seed. I didn't contact him directly. Instead, I used my Dr. Thorne persona to drop a cryptic, technical post in a private forum that Sterling Knight was known to frequent, complaining about the excessive security of a new Q-Ledger protocol. The post was complex enough to filter out low-level criminals, but specific enough to pique the interest of someone like Sterling, who lives on the cutting edge of fraud. The bait was set. Now I just had to wait for the fish to bite. I monitored the forums with a dedicated alert system. The moment the Sterling Knight account viewed the post, an internal timer started. He would research the term, find the exclusive website, and then, likely, find the leaked credentials from Dr. Thorne's secondary posts. 3 days later, the alert went off. An IP address matching the known London location of Alistair Sterling attempted to access the Janus Protocol website. It was an initial, cautious probe, almost certainly automated. Then an hour later, a second manual attempt. I watched the server logs like a hawk. The manual login attempt was successful, using the leaked credentials. The session lasted 12 minutes. 12 minutes of him seeing a dashboard showing massive untraceable transfers, fictional assets worth billions, and the promise of a mechanism that could wash his entire criminal fortune clean in minutes. The arrogance I had studied in his chat messages and his chess moves was now manifesting in his digital footsteps. He didn't hesitate. He was already planning his next move, certain he was the hunter, not the hunted. He was in my echo chamber now. I could almost hear the smooth, confident voice of Dr. Alistair Finch humming with greed. The time for caution was over. It was time for the final act of the Janus Protocol.
Sterling was addicted almost instantly. Once he saw the potential of the Janus Protocol, his usual 6-month caution dissolved into a frantic 2-week sprint of greed. He viewed Dr. Elias Thorne, my fictional whistleblower, not as a threat, but as an unwitting accomplice, a disgruntled genius whose code he could steal. My primary task became managing the illusion. I needed him to commit heavily,
but not so heavily that he suspected an entire project of this magnitude was a fabrication built just for him. He initiated contact with Thorne through an encrypted channel. His message was a masterpiece of manipulative diplomacy. Mr. Thorne, I represent a consortium interested in the integrity of the Q ledger system. Your recent observations on its vulnerabilities concern us. We require a secure demonstration of its transfer mechanism. A substantial consultation fee is, naturally, available. I, as Thorne, played the part of the reluctant, technically minded idealist. I complained about the system's true owners, a thinly veiled reference to a generic global criminal cartel, and insisted my only goal was to see the protocol stabilized. I proposed a stress test, a way to expose the theoretical flaws of the system by running a large-scale, high-value transaction. This was the core of the trap. Sterling needed to use his money, his real, current, illegally gained funds to test the system. I set the parameters. To properly assess the quantum handshake, we need a significant, verifiable transfer. Let's call it the beta transfer. You transfer $1.5 million USD equivalent in crypto to a newly generated Janus wallet. The protocol executes a test wash, converting it into the Q token, holding it for 24 hours to track its signature, and then routing it to a secondary, pre-approved wallet of your choosing. This proves the system is both fast and untraceable. $1.5 million. It was 3 times what he took from me, but I knew his current operational scale was massive. For him, this was the cost of buying into the next decade of untraceable wealth. He hesitated for 2 days, the longest 2 days of my life, but the hook was too deep. The promise of the ultimate money laundering mechanism was too great to ignore. He agreed. The moment before the transfer, he sent one last chillingly arrogant message. Dr. Thorne, rest assured this demonstration will be mutually beneficial. Should the protocol perform as advertised, we will ensure your current difficulties are resolved. Consider it a down payment on a beautiful future. The message was signed AS. I felt a cold rush of adrenaline. He was so close to taking the bait that he was dropping his fake name. The cryptocurrency transfer hit the Janus protocol wallet. $1,552,890 equivalent in Monero. My script didn't waste a millisecond. It didn't perform a test wash. It didn't route the funds. The money immediately triggered 3 simultaneous operations. The black hole. The entire sum was automatically routed through 3 highly dispersed, legitimate exchange platforms and converted into 5 different low-liquidity altcoins, then instantly donated to 5 large verifiable international charities focused on poverty relief and anti-fraud education. The money was gone, laundered not by him, but by me, into humanitarian aid. Untraceable, irreversible, and morally at least, on my end, vindicated. The digital collapse. All the shell corporations, the fake websites, the VPNs, and the virtual servers associated with Alastair Sterling's entire current operation, the ones that I'd painstakingly mapped out over weeks, simultaneously received an anonymous, verifiable tip-off containing full evidence packages of fraud and wire transfer details addressed to the respective countries' financial regulatory bodies and police. The personal echo. The final, most satisfying step. My script waited until the Monero transfer was confirmed and the charitable donations were completed. Then, it initiated the only transfer back to Alastair Sterling's primary private wallet. The amount wasn't $1.5 million. It was $480,000.00. Along with the transfer, a message appeared on his private Janus protocol dashboard, which I'd engineered to pop up as a non-dismissible full-screen alert. Transfer complete. Balance reconciled. The echo chamber is closed.
I sat back in my chair, the silence of my apartment thick and absolute. The clock on my laptop read 12:03 a.m. It had taken exactly 3 minutes for the entire operation to execute. The system was now self-destructing, wiping its logs, deleting the VPS instances, and disintegrating every digital trace of the Janus protocol and Dr. Elias Thorne. For a solid 10 minutes, there was nothing. No frantic calls, no panicked emails, just the digital void. He was likely staring at his screen, paralysed. I imagined him, the smooth, confident veneer shattering, replaced by sheer disbelief. He wouldn't believe he was the victim of a scam. He'd believe he was the victim of a betrayal, the mark of a superior intelligence. That thought gave me a strange, bitter satisfaction. The first response wasn't a message. It was a furious, desperate attempt to log back into the Janus dashboard, followed by attempts to trace the Monero transaction. All failed. The dashboard was dead, the wallet address was a digital ghost, and the Monero was already dispersed and repurposed into dozens of verifiable public charity wallets. Perfectly clean money now. Then came the message. It bypassed all the secure channels and hit my old personal throwaway email address, the one he had from the Nexus Global Trust days. It was raw, unmasked, and terrifying. Subject: you. Body: who the hell are you? You think this is over? You just stole 1.5 million. The people who are going to find you. I smiled. The arrogance was still there, but now it was laced with fear. I typed back a single reply. Subject: balance reconciled. Body: it was $480,000. I simply took your 1.5 million and gave the world back what you took from me. The difference went to help real people. Consider the digital evidence I sent to the London police a warning. You lost more than money today, Alistair. You lost your invisibility. I hit send. I immediately deleted the email account and disconnected from the VPN. My physical revenge was watching the subsequent chaos unfold. Over the next few weeks, I followed the news with detached interest. Financial crime arrests were made in London, relating to an Orion syndicate of international fraud. No name was publicly released, but the details matched the evidence I submitted perfectly. Alistair Sterling, the great digital ghost, was now very much corporeal, caught in the dragnet I'd set with his own greed as bait. And the $480,000? It sat in my old empty bank account, transferred directly from his primary holding wallet. It was a Trojan horse. He couldn't report it as stolen. That would mean admitting to his entire operation. He couldn't spend it freely. It was the exact amount he'd stolen from me, tainted by its history. I had forced him to reconcile the balance of his crime, leaving him financially crippled and facing prosecution, all while forcing his illegal funds into legitimate circulation. The revenge was complete, but I wasn't celebrating. I still sat in the same small office, still smelt the stale coffee. The money was back, yes, but the year of my life, the crushing psychological burden, the transformation into someone capable of such meticulous, cold-blooded deceit, that wasn't recoverable. I had become a hunter to catch a predator, and the experience had changed my DNA. I looked at the recovered money in my account. It was a painful symbol of a war I won but shouldn't have had to fight. I finally closed the laptop. The money would go towards building the company I originally planned, but this time, the venture would be built on the foundation of a very different kind of trust. One earned through pain, not smooth sales pitches. I'd walked into an echo chamber built of lies, and I'd trapped the architect using his own voice. The chapter was closed. I was finally, truly free to start over.